Hi everyone, welcome to the Xoro sales tax tutorial. In this guide, we're going to walk through how to file a tax return and manage it and view it from there. So the way your Xoro system works is basically as you're creating transactions, so invoices, bills, and so forth in the system, all those taxes are going to get collected onto these forms that you can see on the prepare sales tax module. So the way I got here is just punching in prepare tax return rather. And what this pulls up rather is your tax return. So it can be either a provincial tax return. In this case, I've got a Canadian federal tax return selected here, or it can be a provincial tax return or state tax return. So I'm going to pull up the provincial or state one here. In this case, I've got a BC tax return. So you can actually file both separately. They work individually. It just depends which one you want to file. So if I wanted to file the GST one in this case, I'm going to select this. And so your system should already be set up with the proper tax return forms here. So if you need a state added or something like that, just contact us. And so what you can do is select the state that you want to file a return for, a state, province, or federally, however you want to do it. And a couple things here. So every row should match basically a corporate return. It's going to look very similar to that. And this amount column here, it's basically the amount for this date period that's got selected here. So what I've done is you can see that the filed tax return is actually filed up to June 24th here. So what I'm viewing is the tax return that I'm seeing is from June 25th to August 31st. So I can actually adjust this. So if I make this, for example, July 7th, now I'm seeing it from June 25th to July 7th. So I'm seeing these numbers according to this window that I've got here. Your filing period basically controls how you want this window to be. So do you want it to be monthly? Do you want it to be quarterly, yearly, and so forth? So you can do all sorts of things here. You can also add a tax installment here. We'll talk about tax installments a little bit later on. For now, I'm just going to pull up July. So I'm seeing the return I'm about to file from June 24th to July 10th. So let me actually pull up a decent number here. Let's see here. I think something like this should be good. Right. So basically what I've got here is a return that I'm going to file from the 25th to 27th. And I can basically review all the lines here, make sure they're all good. If I need to make an adjustment to a line, I can go to the right side here and I can make an adjustment. Now, before I make an adjustment, I'm just going to mention this exception column here. So this exception column is basically if there are any changes made to transactions that altered any tax amounts in a filed tax period. So for example, if I were to make a change to an invoice in the month of May, and let's say I were to remove taxes from that invoice or add additional taxes, it would actually affect this exception column here because you made changes to a transaction after it, and that transaction fell in a filed period. That's why it's going to create an exception. So that's basically what's going on here with this exceptions column. If I want to make an adjustment, so let's say I want to adjust line 104 here, I can click on this pencil. I can choose my tax item that I want to adjust, my date. So do I want this to be in an exception period or today's date? How do I want to do it? So I'll just choose the last date of the 6/27 here of the filed period. So let's say I make it $50 and I can put in a memo and click on adjust. Let me see here. Or sorry, let me actually just, I think I've got the wrong date here. There we go. So that's better. So let's make an adjustment now. I actually had it for the following year. Let's make it $50 and let's click on adjust. And you'll see now the because I chose a date of 7/06, it's actually going to put the $50 in this column here. If I chose a date that was before 6/24, so during a filed period, it would actually put that exception amount in this column here. So I can make actually negative exceptions as well. So for example, let's say I were to do that. Let's say I were to select June 1st, make it -50, adjust. And you can see now that negative 50 is in this column here. So the form is automatically going to basically do all the math for you, and it's going to give you a balance at the bottom that that you owe to the government for this filed period. So a positive amount basically means that you owe the government that amount. A negative amount means it's a refund. So in this case, it's a positive amount. So if I file this, I'm going to owe the government, the federal government here, because it's GST 49.95. So let me go ahead, and if everything looks okay, let me file this sales tax. So it's just going to warn me that make sure everything's correct. You won't be able to unfile a tax return. So that's something that's very important. This will basically file the return for that date, and you won't be able to unfile it. So make sure everything's correct. Click OK. And you can see now it's going to confirm for you that it's been filed. And you can see now this date is also changed too. So it's gone ahead now because we've filed it up to July 6th. So the way to see my filed return now is if I go to Tax File Center, and basically I can see my most recent filed return at the top here. So you can control your filed returns based on what form you're filing it for. So in this case, we filed it for GST, the federal return. So 49.95 was the amount due on that period, and the amount due total is actually a carryover from a previously paid period. So depending on your state and the way your form is built, you may have the situation here. Basically, it's carrying over a balance from the previous filed return. So that's why this amount due total has been adjusted. Basically, in this case, it's taking this figure here and adding 49.95 to it to get this. So I can actually double click this. I can review my filed return. I can drill down some of these figures here. I can export it to PDF, print it off, and then send it to the government along with a check for this return. So that's basically how you file a sales tax return, make adjustments, and then manage that return from the tax return center.